Got a lot of requests for this one. Here it is. Coming up, it's the ultimate countdown of classic crushes, heartbreaks, and unforgettable anthems. Some of these songs were written about real people, while others just needed the perfect name to make them timeless. It's our Girl in the Song countdown, including the naughty song that offended every politician's wife in Washington, D.C., made it so we had to put those little advisory stickers on albums. And then another that a male icon allegedly wrote to make peace when his buddy's wife found them in bed together. Plus a song that made an obscure girl's name one of the most popular of the 70s. And another song that the band hated so much, most of the key members didn't even show up to record the song. And then it became their biggest hit, of course. Interviews and stories are coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, Music Junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember this commercial...
Peppers, Marion Peppers, Diet Peppers, Quiet Peppers, wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
You're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. I know you'll find something to dig on this channel. Also, go to ProfessorofRock.com to sign up for our live streams there. We got some great guests coming up. Well, it's an age-old tradition. Started many years ago. You know, in the 40s, you had Goodnight Irene from Sinatra.
Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene.
In the 50s, you had Little Richard's Lucille and many more. The Mysterious Vixens and popular songs that have kept us all in stitches. Today, we're counting down the top 15 songs with girls' names in the title. We're going to launch our countdown of that top 15 by giving special recognition to the song that ignited the name craze in the rock era, at least by my account. Number 15, I've got Peggy Sue by the late, great Buddy Holly.
Without Peggy, my Peggy Sue.
Back in 1957, a young Buddy Holly was carving out his place in rock and roll history alongside his drummer Jerry Allison and producer Norman Petty. He worked on a song that would soon become one of his biggest hits.
Oh, well, I love you, Kelly. I love you, Peggy Sue.
Officially, the credits went to Allison and Petty, but those close to the story know that Buddy Holly had a major hand in writing it as well. Here's what the real Peggy Sue told me about it.
The song was written by Buddy Holly, and the bridge of the song was written by Norman Petty. And the outstanding drumming was Jerry Ellison. So it is probably, and it's like the national anthem of rock and roll, but it's probably the most exciting and romantic and fun piece of music that's been written, I think. And I think that's why it's lasted so long. It's just a unique piece of music, rock and roll music put together, and especially with the rockabilly sound, introduced into it. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased to be part of that and have my name in it.
Big heartfelt thank you to Peggy Sue Guerin for her sweet spirit. She passed away a few years ago. Buddy Holly's Peggy Sue rocked number 6 in the UK, number 4 in Canada, and number 3 in the good old Billboard Hot 100 back in '57.
Now won't you, Peggy Sue?
At number 14, we have a song that was unimaginable at the time. No one could have predicted that the biggest hit that Kiss ever had would be a heartfelt ballad. But that's what happened with Beth.
Beth, I hear you calling.
Beth was allegedly written by drummer Peter Criss, though Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons don't believe he actually composed it. The band detested it, Beth. They hated it. They hated it so much they didn't even show up to record it. Half the band didn't even play on it, including Gene and Paul.
Oh, Beth, what can I do?
Then they tried to keep it off their album. They buried it on a B-side. That is until a random DJ turned the record around and made it a smash. Here's what former guitarist Ace Frehley told me about it.
I always loved the song. I thought it was a beautiful song. I thought Peter did a great job on the vocals, and most of it is Bob Ezrin playing piano.
Beth, I hear you calling.
I love the song. The only problem with the song was that it wasn't in character with the rest of the songs we played.
Yeah.
And that was probably what Paul and Gene were thinking if they made statements like they didn't like the song.
Released from the Destroyer LP, Beth was the highest charting song for Kiss, even though the only band members that performed on it was Peter Criss.
Beth, what can I
Beth came home at number 7 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went to number 5 in Canada in 1976. At number 13 on our countdown, it's one of Mick Jagger's best vocals ever, Rolling Stones with Angie. One of the first big rumors swirling around Angie was that it had been written about David Bowie's wife, Angela. Actually, in her autobiography, Angela claims she once walked in on David Bowie and Mick Jagger in bed together. Story that, Mick has always denied. According to the gossip mill, Mick supposedly wrote Angie to smooth things over with her. It's been told a few times. Another rumor about the origin of Angie was that it was inspired by Keith Richards' girlfriend, Anita Pallenberg. But Keith finally set the record straight in his 2010 autobiography, Life. Back in the spring of '72, Keith was holed up in a drug clinic trying to get clean while Anita was just down the road giving birth to their daughter, Angela. After the worst of the withdrawal passed, Keith picked up his guitar for the first time in what felt like forever and sitting there in bed, finally was able to move his fingers without agony, and the song just spilled out. I just went, Angie, Angie, he wrote. But it wasn't about Anita, actually. It wasn't even about Angela, their baby. Keith explained that Angie was simply a name that fit the mood, like saying, oh, Diana.
Oh, Diana, can't you see?
In fact, he didn't even know they were having a daughter named Angela when he wrote it. Of course, back then, parents didn't find out the baby's gender until the big reveal came in the delivery room. Angie, perhaps the biggest departure from the edgy sound of the Stones, was the lead single from the Goat Head Soup LP. The single, of course, was massive worldwide, steadily trekking to number 1 in Australia, Holland, Canada, France, Italy, the UK, and the US, among many other countries. Next up, it's the comeback single from a band that wasn't able to put out music for 8 years because of a lawsuit. I've got Boston with a ballad named Amanda at number 12 on the countdown. We talked a lot about Amanda being one of those songs with a girl's name that wasn't written about a real person with the same name. It just worked well within the context of the song's arrangement. Jim Mazdio worked with Tom Scholz and Brad Delp on the making of Amanda, and here's what he shared with me in an interview. That was a little bit of a risk, too, to put the first single out as kind of a power ballad rather than one of your big rockers.
Right, sure. But it worked. That was fine because it made it more broad. It became more of a, it wasn't just a rockin' album. It was broader appeal.
There's something I just have to say.
It was leaked early, and I think that kind of gave the fans the taste. It was leaked a little bit, but they didn't get it. So that maybe even drove it. And another thing I remember hearing is the tour. The Third Stage tour was one of the most phenomenal tours in history of music. We had 4 sold-out shows in every city.
Boston hadn't put out a record in 8 years because of a lawsuit with their label, and they won. But by this time, the musical landscape had completely changed, and to make matters worse, someone leaked a rough demo of their new song, Amanda, to radio many months before it was supposed to come out. But then Boston did the unthinkable. Their leaked single, Amanda, went straight to number 1, as did their album, and they ruled the mid-'80s just like they did the '70s. Third Stage, the album, and Amanda both hit number 1.
I'm in love with you.
Continuing with our countdown of the top songs of the girl's name in the title, it's a track from the best-selling album of all time. I've got the King of Pop with Billie Jean at number 11.
She told me her name was Billie Jean, and she caused a scene.
In Billie Jean, Michael Jackson spins the tale of a woman who insists that the narrator is the father of her newborn son, a claim he flatly denies.
Billie Jean's not my love.
But behind the beat and the unforgettable hook, the story was rooted in real life. It was inspired by not one, but multiple stalker encounters. And one of them was by one of the most demented groupies ever. This disturbed fan wrote a letter, actually many letters, claiming she and this artist were meant to be together and that he was the father of her baby. And then one day, she sent him a package with a weapon, telling him that they should use it on themselves so they could die together and be in the afterlife. Another crazy fact about this song, Michael Jackson was so consumed by Billie Jean when he was working on it, he was playing it in his car and he didn't even notice that his car was on fire while he was driving down the freeway. He was completely locked into the song and he almost died. Man, Billie Jean was so big. It helped Thriller sell over 100 million copies. Michael and his producer, the late Quincy Jones, both believed Billie Jean was going to be a huge hit. And of course it was. It hit #1 everywhere. It was really probably the biggest song of the 80s in terms of what it did. Coming in at number 10 on the countdown of the top 15 songs with the girl's name in the title, it's another fallen icon with a song that offended many a politician's wives. Prince with Darling Nikki.
The lights went out and Nikki started to grind.
When Prince unleashed Purple Rain to the world, he packed it with songs that pushed boundaries. And none stirred up more controversy than Darling Nikki. Produced, arranged, composed, and performed entirely by Prince himself, the track wasn't even released as a single. But it didn't need to be to cause a social hurricane, which it did. The song told the steamy tale of a deviant named Nikki who seduces the singer in a way that was anything but subtle. Right?
You a girl named Nikki, I guess you could say she was a sex fiend.
One lyric in particular, an explicit nod to female self-love, can't say the word on here. That one caught the attention of Tipper Gore, who was so shocked after hearing it that she launched a national campaign for greater content warnings on albums. Her outrage became a spark that led to the creation of the now famous parental advisory sticker, forever linking Darling Nikki to a new era of music censorship.
She said, how'd you like to waste some time? And I could not resist.
And so it was in 1985 that Tipper Gore found herself at the center of a cultural firestorm, all because of a Prince song. One day she caught her 11-year-old daughter listening to Prince's Darling Nikki, and she was stunned, offended, surprised, everything by its explicit lyrics. Disturbed by what she heard, Tipper helped co-found the Parents Music Resource Center, or the PMRC, determined to warn other parents about what was slipping into their kids' record collections. To drive their point home, the PMRC released a list of what they called the 15 filthiest songs in popular music. The Filthy 15. Right at the #1 position was Darling Nikki. Their campaign would eventually lead to the creation of the now iconic parental advisory sticker, changing the way albums were labeled and how music was policed, maybe forever. It just made people want to buy the albums more, so you got that. Oh boy, what controversy. At number 9, I've got Mandy, the song that started off an amazing string of hits by Barry Manilow.
How happy you made me, oh Mandy.
You know, it may surprise some to learn that Mandy was originally titled Brandy, and it was first recorded by the song's co-author Scott English, who collaborated with Richard Kerr, who later wrote several hit songs for Barry Manilow. That's right, Barry Manilow didn't write this one. So this is what Barry told me about it.
It was called Brandy. Clive Davis found the song for me. It was a rock and roll song called Brandy. And it didn't sound good on me. And so I rearranged it and, changed the chords around and changed the song around and changed the words around and made it into a ballad that sounded good on me. I thought, how can a little ballad like this be a hit song? But boy, was I ever wrong. It exploded, and my life changed in a million pieces.
Scott English's Brandy, not to be confused by the Looking Glass song, stalled at number 91 on the Billboard Hot 171. But then Barry reconstructed the song and changed the title to Mandy, so he really did kind of write it.
But I sent you away, oh Mandy.
'74, it soared to #1 in Canada and America, and the #1 on the adult contemporary chart as well.
But I sent you away, oh,
We're at the #8 position on our countdown of the top 15 songs with a girl's name in the title, and it's the stadium sing-along classic, Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. In 2007, Neil Diamond finally shared a secret he'd been keeping for decades. Performing Sweet Caroline via satellite for Caroline Kennedy's 50th birthday party, he revealed that she was the inspiration behind the beloved classic. Speaking to the Associated Press afterward, Neil Diamond admitted, saying, "I've never discussed it with anybody before. Intentionally, I thought maybe I would tell it to Caroline when I met her someday. I'm happy to have gotten this off my chest and to have expressed it to Caroline." He worried that the revelation might embarrass her. Instead, of course, she was touched and genuinely thrilled. Who wouldn't be? Sweet Caroline, come on.
good times never seem so good.
Neil disclosed that back in the 60s, when he was just a struggling young songwriter, he came across a magazine photo of a little girl, Caroline Kennedy, dressed in crisp riding gear, standing proudly next to her pony. There's just something so pure and joyful about the image that sparked a song that came into his mind instantly. Years later, sitting in a Memphis hotel room, Diamond finally wrote Sweet Caroline. Actually took him less than an hour. By the time the song hit the airwaves, Caroline was just 11 years old, completely unaware that her childhood moment had inspired a tune that would echo across generations in sports stadiums and arenas around the globe. And, even had new lyrics added by the fans, singing along to it. It was the #9 single in Ireland, #8 in the UK, #7 in South Africa, and #4 in the Billboard Hot 100. Its highest chart position was in Canada at #3. All right, coming in at #7 on the countdown, it's one of the prettiest songs ever. Came from real life drama. I've got John Denver with Annie's Song. The relationship between John Denver and Ann Martell, Annie, it began as a storybook romance, but it turned into a soap opera. It was during the couple's first separation in 1974 that John Denver wrote a song for his then wife that he titled, and came to him faster than almost anything he'd ever written. It was like 5 minutes, start to finish. It actually happened while he was riding a ski lift in Aspen, Colorado. He had the crisp mountain air swirling around him, and as he rose higher above the snow-covered trees, he found himself overwhelmed by a rush of emotion. At that time, John was reflecting on the deep joy he felt from rekindling his marriage with Annie. In his autobiography, he described the moment. He said, "Suddenly, I'm hypersensitive to how beautiful everything is. All these things filled up my senses, and when I said this to myself, these unbridled images came one after the other. All of the pictures emerged, and I was left with..." Out of that flood of feeling, the song poured out, a pure heartfelt emotion of that love that he felt in that exact moment. Annie's Song wasn't just a melody. It was a snapshot of a man completely in awe of the life and the love surrounding him, and you can hear it in every part of the song. Unfortunately, the euphoria that John Denver felt when he wrote Annie's Song, it just didn't last. Even though it was a magical song, in the end, Annie's Song couldn't save the marriage. It actually ended in brutal divorce. It got so bad at one point, this Boy Scout we know as John Denver took a chainsaw to their king-size bed. John and Ann divorced in 1982. Still, Annie's Song was a #1 smash in the UK, Ireland, Canada, and on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks in the summer of 1975. Now we're up to a song that has empirical data to prove that it had a big effect on the naming of newborn females when its popularity mushroomed in 1972. At #6, I've got Brandy by Looking Glass. Brandy, you're a fine girl, parentheses song.
Laying whiskey down, they say Brandy.
When Brandy hit the airwaves in 72, it didn't just climb the music charts. It started showing up in baby name books too. Before the song dropped, Brandy was sitting way down at number 353 on the list of popular girls' names. It was obscure, if you can believe that. But after the song caught fire, boom, it jumped to number 140 that same year. And by 1973, when the song's full impact had really sunk in, the name Brandy sailed all the way to the top 80. Safe to say a lot of new parents thought Brandy was a fine name. Sorry, I had to.
They say, Brandy, you're a fine girl.
It actually made it one of the most popular names of the time for years after. I had a great conversation with Elliot Leary, the artist that wrote, played guitar, and sang lead on this beloved classic. Here's what he told me.
What's interesting is I learned afterwards, I didn't know it then, but apparently, I mean, Washington, D.C. was not a market that was known for breaking hit records. Philadelphia would be one, or you know, Houston or Dallas. But Harv Moore was the DJ there. I never met Harv Moore to this day. Wow. But Robert Mandel, who I do know and I still see occasionally, went into Harv Moore and he said, you know, he's pitching his records, he's a promotion man. He says, have you heard this Looking Glass thing? He's got the test pressing of the album with him. And Harv goes, yeah. He says, you know, we played that Don't It Make You Feel Good a couple of times, but they're really not doing anything, you know. And Robert said to him, have you heard the rest of the album? Harv said, no. So Robert says, I got a test pressing here. There's one track I'd really like you to hear. And he puts on Brandy. And Harv says, hey, I like that. So he takes the test pressing, puts it on the radio right then and there. And all of a sudden, the phones are
lit up like a Christmas tree.
Like, as they say, lit up like a Christmas tree. The phones are ringing and requesting it and over again. So he added it to the playlist. Back then, disc jockeys could add it to their playlists. Yeah. And
he said he'd never gotten a response like that from a song in like 15 years.
All I can tell you is 3 weeks later, we went up to the Epic Records office on 52nd and Broadway, and we met with a couple of the executives there, and they said, well, you're going to have a #1 gold record.
Brandy ended up as one of the most popular songs in 1972 and is still going strong in pop culture today. The tune broke the top 5 in New Zealand and grabbed the #1 spot in Canada and, of course, on the Billboard Hot 100. Coming in at number 5 on our countdown of the top 15 songs with a girl's name in the title, it's one of the true geniuses of the rock era with one of the most iconic bands from America. I'm talking about, a truly haunting song, Caroline No by the Beach Boys with Brian Wilson.
Oh, Caroline, no.
In early '66, Brian Wilson stepped out on his own for the first time, releasing a mesmerizing new song called Caroline No. Marked his first solo single, and just a couple of months later, it would find a permanent home as the closing track on the Beach Boys' highly acclaimed Pet Sounds album. Just haunting. I had the unique honor of speaking with Brian Wilson and Tony Asher on their collaboration of this tragically underrated track. Here's what they said. Great song. Caroline No.
Right.
It's just one of the most heartbreaking.
It's a beautiful tune. It really is.
I always thought that Sinatra should have tried singing that one.
Yeah. A hell of a song, yeah.
I remember that Tony Asher had said that he was saying, Caroline, I know, but you heard him wrong, right? You thought he said Caroline No, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't understand what he was saying. I didn't see Caroline No actually is I really liked the way it came out, and I'm happy that it ended up being that. But I can remember thinking that it was Carol I Know, and I thought, well, okay, what does she know? So then I thought, okay, so now we have to develop that idea a little bit more, and then I discovered that's not what he was hearing. So I think it is at the same time a sort of naive song and a fairly. It deals with fairly complex emotions, but it's in a sort of naive way. So, and I did have a girlfriend named Carol.
Yeah. So. Like the entire Pet Sounds album, which is in a 3-way tie for my favorite album of all time, Caroline No didn't get the praise that it should have for many years after its release. It was issued as the flip side to the more Beach Boys traditional Summer Means New Love. The combo stalling at number 32 on the Billboard Hot 100. But it might be the most haunting song of the 60s. It may not be a word-for-word account of what happened, but the next track on our countdown of songs with a girl's name in the title was inspired by a big, huge misunderstanding. At number 4, I've got the Kinks with Lola. Now, Ray Davies, the lead vocalist and rhythm guitarist for the Kinks, penned Lola, claiming that it's all about the band's manager hooking up with a crossdresser that he thought was a woman. The story of Lola started during a wild night in Paris. Actually, the Kinks' manager, Robert Weiss, had been out partying. He found himself dancing with a striking woman. Now, he was completely smitten, twirling around the room without a care in the world. This guy was in love. When they finally stumbled back to his apartment in the early morning hours, Robert was still buzzing with excitement. Man, I'm really onto something here, is what he would tell Ray Davies, grinning from ear to ear. But as the sun started to rise and the hazy glow of the night wore off, Ray, he took a closer look and he spotted some stubble on Robert's dance partner. Apparently, Lola was not the woman that his manager thought she was. Ray leaned over to Robert and said, half laughing, "Have you seen the stubble?" Robert was too drunk to care, and he just shrugged it off. Ray Davies said that he didn't initially show the lyrics to the band. We just rehearsed it with the La 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 Lola chorus, which came first. He had a 2-year-old daughter at the time, and she was singing along to it, and that's when he knew it was going to be an instant hit record. That's usually how you know. Ray said he came up with a riff for Lola just by messing around with some open strings on his guitar. Pretty casual, really. But his brother Dave Davies, who also played the guitar for the Kinks, wasn't exactly thrilled about it. Dave felt like he deserved the songwriting credit too, and it stirred up some heated tension between the Davies brothers, since Ray ended up getting the sole composer credit for Lola. Although Ray believed the Kinks would have a big old hit with Lola, especially after hearing his daughter sing it, he thought it would have caused a big uproar. But with some crafty writing, he was able to disguise Lola just enough so that listeners didn't overthink it and just enjoyed a catchy tune. In Ray's words, the story unfolds better than if the song were called "I Dated a Drag Queen." That's his words. Some radio stations faded out the end of the song when Lola's real gender was revealed, but for the most part, Lola garnered immediate airplay, just like Ray Davies predicted it would. Resting at number 1 in 7 countries, including South Africa, Ireland, and New Zealand. Flourished in the UK at number 2 and peaked at number 9 here on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1970. All right, this top 3 was tough, but coming in at number 3 on our countdown is the tale of a man who falls for a lady of the night. I've got the Police with Roxanne.
Roxanne.
Before the Police dropped their first album, Sting was already onto something special. In late 1978, he wrote a song called Roxanne, the name coming from a poster of the famous Cyrano de Bergerac play that was hanging on a wall in the hotel lobby. Here's what Sting and drummer Stuart Copeland told me about Roxanne.
We were living within the very strict confines of the punk dogma, and the rules were very tight. And did not allow for such ballads as Roxanne. But that song just squirted out of him. He couldn't help it. And indeed, the inspiration was one night we were in Paris, and I went off drinking with Generation X and the Electric Chairs, which is Billy Idol and his band. And Sting went off lonely as a cloud down to the red light district and was inspired to write Roxanne.
I was talking to Stuart Copeland actually a few months ago, and he was telling me about the part in Roxanne where you sit down, the laugh. I asked him where that laugh came from, in Roxanne. About you sitting on the piano.
Yeah, the piano was open. I thought the piano lid was shut. I just wanted to rest my ass, but my ass played the demolished chord in the beginning. It's there if you listen. and it just made me laugh. So we just kept it all on.
Roxanne became a classic, of course, but it was only a moderate hit during his first run. Peaked at number 31 in Canada, number 32 on the Billboard Hot 100, and number 12 in the UK. A few years later, the Police were one of the biggest bands in the world, if not the biggest band by 1983. Here we are at the bridesmaid position on the countdown of the top 15 songs with the girl's name in the title. This was much tougher than you think it was. Written by keyboardist David Paich and performed by Toto, I've Got Rosanna.
Rosanna, Rosanna.
Emmy-nominated actress Rosanna Arquette once commented in an interview that Rosanna came about when she showed up at a Toto recording session at like 4 in the morning, bringing the boys juice and beer. Here's more of what the band told me about Rosanna, a different take.
Never thought that a girl like you could ever care for me.
Without the band and this collaborative effort, it's a different song. That would be a wholly different song right now, because that was going to be a Bo Diddley kind of groove in the front.
Right.
And Jeff just defined that by playing that intro.
Well, Jeff's on YouTube teaching people how to play
How
it.
to play
Have you
it,
ever seen that?
Putting them together, this is what it came up with.
We didn't rehearse. We never rehearsed our stuff.
Yeah.
Dave, what do you got? Dave got, we heard you playing the song. And then Jeff goes, well, Jeff had been listening to Led Zeppelin, Fool on the Hill. That and Bernard Purdy's Babylon System.
Yeah.
So he sort of did his version of that.
I had been listening to Panic in Detroit with Bowie, so I wanted this doom, 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 doom. Jeff just took one look. He didn't even play that. He tried about one bar of it and said, no. He goes, let me tell you, this is how this needs to be. And he didn't sit down and analyze that like he does on the YouTube thing. He just started playing that.
Yeah, he was just
right on the
we were
spot.
Sunset Sound, and then Hungy was there, and he played the song. We wrote a really quick chord to it, and the second take is what you hear.
Toto really scored with Rosanna. The single made the top 5 in many countries like Canada at number 4, Sweden and Netherlands, and South Africa at number 3, and climbed to number 2 in Norway, and here on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks, where it sold over 2 million copies. Should have been a number 1 hit. Our countdown of the top 15 songs with the girl's name in the title all boils down to an epic rock track. And number 1, I had to give it to Derek and the Dominoes with Layla. When Eric Clapton was fronting Derek and the Dominoes, he found inspiration for one of his most powerful songs in the pages of an ancient love story. A friend, Ian Dallas, had handed him a copy of the story of Layla and Majnun, written centuries earlier by the Persian poet Nizami Ganjavi. The tale, which traced its roots all the way back to the 7th century Arab folklore, it hit Clapton hard. It was about a young man who fell so madly in love with a beautiful girl that he lost his mind, and in his madness could never be with her. That deep aching sense of longing, it spoke straight to Clapton's heart because he was living a modern-day version of this story. He was madly in love with a woman named Pattie Boyd, who happened to be married to his best friend, George Harrison. A complicated situation for sure, but led to an all-time iconic masterpiece. Now, the origin of the lyrics for Layla has never been disputed. The credit solely belongs to Eric Clapton there. But the music for this epic track has been the source of heavy controversy ever since it was released in '71, especially the piano coda. The music's credited to Jim Gordon, but Rita Coolidge contends that Jim, who was her boyfriend, ripped off a piano arrangement that she composed. And she's been supported by others who were there, including former Dominoes band member Bobby Whitlock. Here's what Rita told me about Layla.
I was at A&M one day having my picture made from following the release of my first record, and I hear this music come over the PA system in the studio, and I'm like, wait a minute. I recognize this music. I know this music. They're like, yeah, you don't know it. It's a brand new Eric Clapton record. I said, it's my music. And they took pictures of the veins popping out in my neck. I was so upset. So I ran out of the studio and went to Tower Records and picked up the record to see if I had gotten any credit, and of course I didn't. And I started trying to get in touch with Eric through Robert Stigwood, and who was his manager at the time, and he was just a mogul. And I got him finally on the phone, and I said, I'm one of the writers, that's my music. And he said, yeah, what are you going to do about it? He said, you're a girl. You don't have the money to fight this. Let it go.
Wow.
And that was it.
Except for solid success in Japan, Holland, and Poland, Layla was a stiff during its initial run. It stalled at number 51 on the Billboard Hot 171. But it had a renaissance a year later when it was re-released in 1972, rising all the way to number 7 in the UK, number 9 in Canada, and number 10 here on the Billboard Hot 100. It was a number 2 smash in New Zealand and blasted to number 1 in Puerto Rico. Regardless of the charts, though, Layla eventually became one of the greatest tracks of the rock era. Eric Clapton went on to superstardom as a solo artist. Rita Coolidge also had success on her own. Jim Gordon, on the other hand, may never have been found guilty of plagiarism, but he was found guilty of taking the life of his own mother in 1983. He actually died in prison in 2023. Here are a few honorable mentions. So many great songs with the girls' names. There are hundreds of them. Can't wait to read your comments about the songs we featured and others that would make your list. Let's have a great discussion below. Tell me your memories. Tell me what your list is. Let's have a great celebration of great songs with girls' names in the titles. And if you like our content, we invite you to subscribe below. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.